Howard Beck, Sports Illustrated senior writer, co-host of the Crossover podcast, joining us on the program. Howard, let me start with that. Give me the logic behind the Nets picking up Blake Griffin.
Good morning, Dan. Listen, I think, let me address what's not the logic behind it. This is not the Nets loading up on yet another all-star to join Kyrie and James Harden and KD and DeAndre Jordan. People are talking about, well, 5 years ago, could you imagine these guys all together? Yeah, 5 years ago, these guys weren't the same guys. Well, three of them were. DeAndre Jordan's not that guy anymore. And Blake Griffin's not the guy that he was when he was playing with DeAndre Jordan for Lob City in LA. We have a very small sample size, Dan, of what Blake Griffin did in Detroit this season. And I'm wavering between looking at that sample size and saying, wow, I think Blake Griffin might be done, versus Blake Griffin is on a young rebuilding team in which he is no longer a focal point at all. And they've got nothing to play for. And maybe there's a second wind for Blake Griffin with a team that matters. And he's joining one now. But I will tell you, Dan, about a month ago, when all the chatter first started about they're going to try to trade Blake Griffin, which was never realistic, they're going to cut him loose, whatever's going to happen, I checked in with some scouts and they basically said, look, it's painful to watch him. I can't watch him. He's that far from what he was. What can he still do? He's a really good passer for a big. He can hit the mid-range shot. He's a good mid-range shooter when he's got his lift, when his legs are there. I just don't know what's left after all the injuries he's been through. And yeah, 31 is young for this, even in this league. But as you know, Blake Griffin's just been through so much in terms of surgeries and injuries, and I don't know what's left. I honestly don't. But the Nets were really thin in the front court, and now they're a little less thin.
Watching the game last night, everybody loves the three. And I went back and I asked Stats Inc., could I get a summary of the game of how many layups and dunks and how many threes? How many mid-range jumpers were there last night? There was one mid-range jumper last night. Can you see a scenario, though, Howard, where somebody is going to be counterintuitive to the three and all of a sudden just go, we want you to deal with our strength, which might be low post, that you actually use a big man as a big man? Or are we, we're I don't want to say stuck with the three, but the three is going to be around a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, the emphasis on the three, Dan, is not going away. The continued shift toward the three ball over mid-range is not going away. I don't know where we top out. Kirk Goldsberry of ESPN has a phenomenal book on this called Sprawl Ball, where he talks about the logical extremes and whether this eventually has to lead to any number of potential solutions, right? Moving the three-point line even further back. I mean, people like adding the 4-point line, whatever. I'm not sure if that solves the problem. But
what if we removed it?
If we removed it entirely, you would have a jammed up court and a boring game, and you wouldn't have people slashing to the hoop anymore, and nobody would watch.
Okay.
We're not going back. And the thing is, there are skilled 2-point mid-range guys in this league. Kawhi Leonard, Devin Booker, Zach LaVine, Kevin Durant, pretty much actually all of the elite scorers, most of them, are really good in the mid-range. Maybe not James Harden. But a lot of these guys are really good there. But the fact is, if you're great in the mid-range, but the other team is just a little bit less good from 3-point range, as you know, you're going to keep losing ground. So as long as somebody's shooting a lot of threes, if the other team is taking 40 threes and you're taking 10 out of some principled stand in favor of the mid-range, you're going to lose because math.
Why do you think Steph Curry entered the 3-point shooting contest?
Because why not? Listen, my colleague Michael Pena at SI, I thought like a month ago, had the best idea about the All-Star game, which was just send the All-Stars and then have the All-Stars do all of the events. In which case, maybe we would have finally gotten LeBron in the dunk contest. Probably not, but maybe Zion, maybe. I think this is efficiency. This was, let's try to invite as few extra bodies as possible. Okay. And Steph is an obvious candidate. And Steph says, I'm there anyway. We're doing it all on the same day. Sure, why not? I mean, that's my guess.
Howard, we got to get rid of the skills competition because it feels like it's a white guy event. Hey, who can throw a European white guy, and you got a crisp pass that you're going to throw into a net. You're going to dribble around some cones, and then somebody maybe will bank in a three. I used to do those drills at summer camp. It was not called a skills competition, Howard. It is not good.
I wrote this because they asked us to predict all the events, which is kind of a goofy exercise in and of itself. And my line on the skills competition was, fun fact, I have never watched this event. And Dan, I'm happy to tell you, I did not break my streak last night. I still did not. Well, I turned it on just in time to see Sabonis accepting the trophy. And I went, oh, darn, I missed it again.
Yeah, I watched. And then I kept going, this isn't really a great skills competition. I think we think, well, there's a 7-footer out there. Well, we're well past a 7-footer who can handle the ball, pass the ball, and shoot the ball.
That's the whole league.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the whole league. Now, the fact is, the only event that you can count on year in and year out to be interesting, watchable, fun is the 3-point shootout. It is like, that one is bulletproof, Dan.
Yep.
The game itself, the All-Star game, most years, the dunk contest last night was terrible. And it's once every 4 or 5 years, we get one that's so electric that we go, okay, it's back. We don't have to kill it. And then a year like this, we go, maybe we're out of ideas for the dunk contest. And yeah, the skills competition is just useless.
And if LeBron had been in the dunk contest, then I know the critics would say, oh, I thought you were going to conserve your energy. Why aren't you conserving your energy? Why don't you let the young guys have the stage? LeBron couldn't win. If he slipped into the dunk contest, it would have been awesome. But the critics would have come out and said, should you be doing that? Shouldn't you conserve your energy? Let somebody else have the spotlight, LeBron.
Yeah, maybe. I think at this point, people would have just been thrilled just to see him finally do it. But you're not going to do it in year 18 at 36. Like, the window for LeBron to have done that closed quite a while ago. And I think that's the part of the problem, is that the stars of today only see downside. You enter the league on day one as a superstar with all these expectations and all this hype and everything. And what happens if you get beaten by, Anthony Simons, Cassius Stanley? Like, you don't want to put yourself in that position. And so I think that's why we don't see the superstars do it anymore, as we did back in the day with Jordan, or years later with Kobe.
He's Howard Beck. He covers the league, Sports Illustrated senior writer. Handicap the second half of the season. Let's assume Anthony Davis is healthy. Are the Lakers, when healthy, better than the Nets when healthy?
Ooh, that's a spicy question, and a relevant one. I mean, listen, we've got at least a dozen, 10, maybe, I don't know, different possible combinations, because I think there are 4 or 5 teams that could come out of each conference. Certainly in the West, maybe 3 in the East. If it's Nets versus Lakers, I'm still leaning Lakers, because we know they can defend, and because I don't know what the Nets are doing with Anthony Davis. Now, listen to our earlier discussion. If Anthony Davis is crushing it at the rim, but James Harden and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are raining threes, math might favor the Nets anyway. But can the Nets deal with Anthony Davis? No. Now, Kevin Durant has some experience playing against LeBron in the finals, and those two will check each other well. But because that's the first question I have, Dan, every time it's the hypothetical. What about the Jazz versus the Lakers? Can the Jazz make the final? What are they doing with LeBron and Anthony Davis? Like, that's the first question for every opponent. The Nets are so potent offensively. And if they just ratchet up the defense to a respectable level and can place them in the fourth quarter, because if the Nets are within 10 points of you in the fourth quarter, you may already be in trouble, because all they have to do is decide to play defense for about 5 minutes and just rain threes on you. They're unguardable. They're absolutely unguardable, and they have just enough role players who can benefit and hit open threes, that trying to guard Durant, Harden, and Irving at the same time is an impossibility.
I was looking at the numbers going into the All-Star break. Points per game, league-wide, 112 points per game is what it's being averaged. That's the highest since 1969, when it was 115 points a game. I tune in and I can watch a game not going into overtime, and somebody's got 140 points, Howard. And I remember when the Knicks and the Cat, remember when Fratello and Pat Riley nearly ruined the game when they were getting those,
yes,
first team to 90, when Riley was with the Knicks and Fratello with the Cavs, I went, oh, my God, look at this. You can get that almost at halftime, it feels like, in these NBA games. Is it too much of a good thing?
Well, I'll say this. No one's nostalgic for Mike Fratello and Pat Riley rooting the game and slowing things down and having 70 to 67 final scores. I mean, some people are nostalgic for that NBA. I don't know why they are. Are we too far? Is the pendulum swung too far in the other direction? I think the league asks itself that question all the time. There's some really smart people at Olympic Tower who are constantly wondering about this and thinking about it. And the earlier discussion we had about how far does this 3-point binge go? Does it hit a logical extreme where it warps the game too much and we have to try to recalibrate? And how do you do that? I think they're thinking about that all the time. I don't think we're at a crisis point yet with the NBA. I think the ratings have bounced back really well this year. And, last year was, obviously a weird year with the pandemic, the bubble, basketball in the summer, all this stuff. And so as long as people are watching, as long as the game is fun, I think we're okay. There are always going to be some basketball purists who feel like scores are too high. There's not enough mid-range. There's not enough of diversity within the offense. Fine. But if people are watching, and the revenue still pouring in, I think they're just going to continue on this course.
Howard, great to talk to you. We appreciate your time. We'll check in with you during the second half of the season. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
That's Howard Beck, Sports Illustrated senior writer, co-host of the Crossover podcast, SiriusXM NBA radio analyst.